What's up, Carolina Calvin? I'm coming to you with a breakdown of the Carolina Panthers heading to Minnesota to play the Vikings. The score was 35-10, Carolina. Um, Let me get into a little bit of what went down in the game. I recently went back and rewatched it. I watched the game live, but I always like to go back and watch it to make sure that I didn't miss anything. Cam Newton finished the game 20 of 26, 242 yards, 3 touchdowns. Pretty solid game. He was accurate. He didn't make too many mistakes. And one thing I do like about what the Carolina Panthers did do, they mixed up the play calling. They actually ran him. Is something they should do more often because he's a running quarterback. Put some plays in there when he runs the ball. Put in you can put in some read option type play. They need to put some plays where he moves around with his feet. Some plays where he runs, of course. Mix the running game, and then mix that with the pass. And I think it makes the offense a little bit more dynamic. We obviously don't have the weapons on the back end. Although Brandon LaFell, really outside of that one catch, that 79-yard catch, he really didn't do much, but he did have that big catch. Wasn't too many drops. He really distributed the ball well. It was more so about the running game. Obviously them being able to mix it up between the running game. Even the running game wasn't too great. But they were able to mix it up with running the pass and keep the Minnesota defense off balance. A defense who's not all that good. D'Angelo Williams, of course, like I said, they didn't run the ball well. 17 carries, 64 yards, 3.8 average. Not too well. Cam Newton had 9 carries for 30 yards. Honestly, I think, I wouldn't necessarily look at, of course the yards do matter, but the fact that he, attempted, he ran the ball 9 times, it shows that, and some of them were design runs where, he got the ball and he was looking to run that was actually blocking, set up for him to run. Mike Tolbert, 8 carries, 27 yards, and a touchdown. Also, Cam Newton had a touchdown. Let's see. Brandon LaFell was targeted 4 times with 4 receptions, 107 yards, and of course 1 touchdown, and of course a 79-yard touchdown. D'Angelo Williams, 5 receptions, 53 yards, was targeted 5 times. Ted Ginn targeted 3 times, 2 receptions for 22 yards. Steve Smith targeted 7 times, 5 receptions for 21 yards. Mike Tolbert, 2 receptions for 20 yards, was targeted 3 times. Greg Olsen, 2 receptions for 19 yards, was targeted 4 times. So, the offense they didn't make mistakes, no turnovers. Mixed up the play calling, run pass. He spread the ball around. I mean, that's all I can ask for. Don't mistakes always it can kill any offense, especially offense who's not as explosive as most offenses that can recover from turnovers. Of course, we didn't make any mistakes and we won the game. Defensively, defense. As I said earlier this year, is really good. Up front with Greg Hardy, mainly the front 7. Greg Hardy, Thomas Davis, Luke Kuechly, Chase Blackburn, Charles Johnson, and the star Lotuele. If I'm saying his name right, I always mess his name up. Up front, they really controlled the line of scrimmage. The Minnesota Vikings offensive linemen could not move them. When the Vikings chose to run the ball, they couldn't move them. They were able to get some pressure on Matt Castle. They got 3 sacks, but they were able to get some hits on them, get some hurries. So of course Mike Mitchell had the 2 interceptions. I like the way they looked today. Sunday. I apologize. Up front, we knew they were really good. You saw what they did to Marshawn Lynch, week 1, and pretty much the defense in terms of stopping the run has been really good, and that's the strength of the Vikings, offense, strength of the Vikings team. being able to establish Adrian Peterson and him able to break off huge runs. He did break off a huge run, but the game was essentially out of reach. I believe around that time it was 28-3. Game was essentially out of reach. He did break off, that run, but for the most part, they really bottled him up. Didn't really give him any running lanes, and we did this without having to bring blitzes. It was a regular front. So hats off to the defense for what they did to that Minnesota Vikings run game. Minnesota Vikings run offensive line who does a good job of blocking for Adrian Peterson. Doesn't get a lot of credit. Obviously, he makes a lot of those plays, but they do a very decent job of blocking, and we pretty much shut that down. Let's see. On to the Minnesota side. It was a lot of Matt Castle's passes, and that was mainly because it was garbage time. It was a double-figure lead. It was around 21-3. We started at that point. Adrian Peterson was essentially eliminated from the game. So for the most part, it was just mainly Matt Castle. He was 32 of 44, 215 yards. I take away that he got sacked 3 times, lost 26 yards, 1 touchdown and 2 picks. We'll say 2 picks. Yeah, 2 picks. If you turn the ball over, it doesn't matter when you do it. It's always a drive killer. And he had the early turnover, in which we drove down the field and scored. But for the most part, the reason I know you're looking at it like he threw 44 times. The reason he threw 44 times was because the game was out of reach. And we pretty much eliminated Adrian Peterson from the game. Speaking of Adrian Peterson, he was 10 carries for 62 yards. And, of course, it's a bit skewed because he had 1 carry for 31 yards. So pretty much other than that, he had 9 carries for 31 yards. So he didn't get off. We really kept him bottled up, as I said, with the front 7. And, without him, for a Minnesota team, without him playing well, it's difficult to win. They can't sit back and throw the entire time because they obviously don't. Matt Castle, not a really good quarterback, and he's definitely not a guy where you can sit back and throw the ball. So they have to establish Adrian Peterson, and they did not this game. Hats off to the Carolina defense for doing that. Let me get a little to receiving numbers. Kyle Rudolph, 9 receptions, 97 yards, 1 touchdown. He was a target 11 times. The 23-yard touchdown, I think it was minute 45. It was a minute 7 left in the fourth quarter. The game was pretty much already 35-3. It was over. That was a garbage time score. Greg Jennings, 6 receptions for 34 yards. He was targeted 10 times. Jerome Simpson, 4 receptions for 30 yards. He was targeted 7. Joe Webb, the former quarterback, was targeted 4 times, 3 receptions for 24 yards. Adrian Peterson had some receptions, 3 receptions for 21 yards, was targeted 4 times. For the most part, a lot of it came when the score was already out of reach. We pretty much bottled up the offense. Of course, we had Mike Mitchell had the two picks of Matt Castle, but for the most part, we slowed down the running game, got pressure on Matt Castle, and the offense did what they needed to do to put points on the board, and that really, eliminated Adrian Peterson from the game. Their biggest weapon eliminated from the game by putting points on the board. Defensively, they didn't look too good. It was some blown coverages, such as Steve Smith. Steve Smith came off in the end zone wide open. And also the Brandon LaFell 79-yard touchdown was a complete blown coverage. The safety didn't come over. No, the safety followed Ted Ginn and didn't come over to LaFell, and LaFell was wide open. Cornerback was expecting help, and they beat him for that touchdown. Their run defense, I would say, was solid. We didn't have any really big games. It was more so it was more so mixing it up. Of course, Mike Tolbert had the 9-yard touchdown, I believe it was a 9-yard touchdown. Um, but other than that, they really did a pretty solid job against the run game. But as I said, the blown coverages and the fact that the offense just couldn't consistently move the ball, and their best option was plugged up. Um, One thing I did want to say, I know I'm hard on the Carolina Panthers, and I should be. You expect the team to win, and I'm always hard. I still don't like Ron Rivera, and people are like, well, we just won. Yeah, we did, and we slowed down Adrian Peterson. But I said the defense was good. It was the play calling. They actually did mix up the play calling, so I'll give them credit where credit is due. They mixed up the play calling. They got Cam Newton moving around. They had some design runs. He actually, threw other receivers the ball, such as Ted Ginn, LaFell. Aside, he doesn't have to always force it to Greg Olsen and Steve Smith. That's his tendencies. And he found other guys, and the run game was good. And the defense has been good, like it's been good all year. Even the back end has improved from the last couple weeks. From a Minnesota team, they didn't get Adrian Peterson off. He didn't really get any holes to run through. Hats off to that Carolina defense. Matt Castle, they were forced to throw the ball. Matt Castle, I know they didn't expect for him to carry them to I won't necessarily say the promised land in terms of him having to drop back and throw 40 times, but he had no choice when the score was what it was. So I completely understand why they threw the ball so many times. Defense, the defense did they did a pretty solid job against the Carolina rushing attack. The problem is they really didn't get too much pressure on Cam Newton, and the blown coverages. But for a Minnesota team, we'll have to see, looking forward, will Josh Freeman eventually become the starter? Who knows? They still have Matt Castle. They still have Christian Ponder there. I'm pretty sure Josh Freeman, they brought him there to compete for that job, because that is a problem position for them. They really have to get, the pressure off Adrian Peterson to pretty much win every game for him. So it could be a possibility next week that you see Josh Freeman in the lineup. You got some weapons, somewhat. You got Jerome Simpson, you got Greg Jennings, you got Kyle Rudolph, but these guys aren't great top number one talent. But you have to get a quarterback back there who's gonna make the throws, and you also have to get some play calling. Because when I looked on the sideline, because I watched this game live as well, the play, it wasn't too many different plays ran. They kept it pretty basic. They pretty much tried to hide the quarterback, despite the score being what it was. Kind of don't understand it. You might as well go and let them air it out. Open the playbook, give them some more plays. But hopefully, the quarterback position gets better for them, because that's a position they really need. But that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. Yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about looking ahead. If you watch the game, let me know what you think, Carolina Panthers fans. Sigh of relief, we did, especially after the horrible game last week. And I know I picked against them this week. And, it seems like every time I pick against them, I think I did remember tweeting that out. Every time I pick against them, they always come in, mix up the plays. The defense, of course, the defense is going to play good. Mix up the play calling, and the offense looks good. They had those games like that. Then, when I do pick them, it's the complete and total opposite. So, I'm going to try this trend of picking against them, even though, I really want them to win, but I'm going to try this trend of picking against them because, why stop doing it if it's working? I mean, it's kind of like it's pretty much a psychological thing with me. Of course, I want them to win. I picked against them, hoping that they would win. And guess what? They won. So, if you're a Panthers fan, let me know what you think about the game. If you rewatched it or if you watched it live, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe. Thanks for watching the video.